So welcome, everybody. My name is Michael Reese. I'm with Coldwell Banker, and I'm just here to talk with these folks. Rather than doing the slides, I'm just going to ask you to introduce yourself. We'll go down the row, starting with Lydia.
Hi, I'm Lydia Harville. I'm a State Farm agent in Santa Cruz. I live right up here, though, on Redwood Lodge. And I've been with State Farm for about 23 years now. And while we are not offering new policies at the moment, hopefully I'll be able to shed some light on options, how to protect your house, and where you can go for coverage while the market is in the state that it's in.
So I'm Rick Parkett. I've lived up here 36 plus years. So it's just down the road on Summit. I got the letter from farmers in the beginning of October. And I'm gonna tell a little bit. I can tell a lot about what I've been going through. And it's not all bad, but it's been a challenge. So I'm just gonna be speaking from a homeowner's perspective. And some of you may know I was one of the founders of the Santa Clara Fire Safe Council. And I'm a long time advocate of defensible space, so I have no problem with that. And I'm also an advocate of the Ready, Set, Go program too. So we can. But anyway.
Hi, Steve Stewart. I'm just a resident leader for our local Summit or Central Summit watershed Firewise community. And I was invited just to go over what Firewise is and what it means to this whole insurance issue and what it can do to health.
You want to have April?
Yeah, let me see if I can find April.
While he's looking up April, she is.
I'm here.
There we go.
I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi,
Hey, April.
everybody. My name is April Schwartz, and I work for Allied Disaster Defense. And we provide a wide range of home hardening services. And we are also an IBHS strategic partner. So we help people get their wildfire prepared home certificate so they can be more prepared to and more likely to get that certificate for their insurance.
Right. And just for everyone's, understanding, we will be recording this and then circulating a recording after the fact for people so you can refer back. So, and the way that we're trying to kind of structure this is kind of a Q&A. I've taken a lot of questions from the community. We've had a lot of respondents. Over 100 people have responded of interest. So obviously insurance is a big issue. And so I'm going to ask some questions of our panel. And then I have some community questions. And then after that, we can open it up to some specifics. I know Rick had some specific information that you wanted to share. And I think also April as well, right? As far as from a programming perspective, right? So I have a couple of questions, so I'll just get started. Is that cool? Okay, so my first question is to Lydia. I think a lot of people are going to want to know like what's going on with insurance kind of from a macro perspective, what's happening in the industry. What do you see kind of bird's eye view as to where we're at, where we're headed and what we can expect. So a lot in one question.
Yeah, so this has probably not seen a true insurance crisis like this in the state of California since maybe early 70s. I've been with State Farm since 2001, and I have seen the homeowners market shut down. I saw Allstate leave the state for quite a long time where they would not write or keep any homeowners policies. I have never seen anything quite like this, and it's a little bit of a perfect storm that's come from accumulation of issues on a legislative stance, going back to the 80s with Prop 103, which put a lot of new regulations into law surrounding insurance companies. Additionally, since COVID, the construction market has gone up about 25 to 30%. That high inflation combined with a shortage of labor and a big delay in the ability to source materials has put a pretty big strain on not only the general community, but on the insurance companies. In California, we are the only state to still use backwards pricing models. So if we want to adjust our rates as an insurance company, we need to use historic claims history to be able to adjust our rates. Every other state is using forward pricing models, which are more accurate. They're better to predict and keep pace with the current regulations and market. So we are still lagging very behind in that regulation where we have to use the last 20 years of historic claims data to be able to justify a rate increase for today. That has really made a lot of pressure on insurance companies. And one of the reasons I believe why a lot of companies have left is they're simply have maxed out what they can justify for rate increases, looking backwards at the last 20 years, but they're looking forward going, there is no way we're going to be able to sustain the claims that we foresee based on the premiums we're collecting. And really, California is what's called a disaster state. We are up there with Florida and Louisiana and Hurricane Alley in terms of we have a fairly high disaster rate in this state. From wildfires to even the storms last year put a ton of pressure on insurance companies. We had, I think, during one of the highest parts of the storm, something like 7,000 claims in the Bay Area in 2 days. It is a heavy hit area. So if you compare us, however, in terms of insurance, we are very artificially low in terms of the premiums. Compared to Louisiana and Florida, we're charging on average half of what those states are paying for homeowners rates. We're low even compared to non-catastrophe states. So this is really kind of culminated to the situation that we're in now. So we have an issue that insurance carriers are not getting the rates that they need to adequately meet the promises they've made to their policyholders. And if they can't get rates, the other way that they can stay solvent is to let go of policies. So now we are in a situation where, especially in our area, it is incredibly difficult to source insurance because so many carriers have either left, decided to not renew these perceived high-risk areas, or have, like State Farm, simply stop writing new business in order to protect themselves.
So it kind of seems like carriers come and go, right, in our state. And we've seen kind of a mass exodus.
Yep.
As of late, right? I mean, what can we expect? What's the insurance commissioner doing? What can we do in leveraging, exerting any pressure on the commissioner? Because it from the outside looking in, it seems a little bit off, right? It just seems like the companies came in, wrote their policies, made their cash, and then skedoodled.
Sure. I
Right.
mean, there are so many people that we're experiencing and talking to who have had, I think as lots of us have mentioned, policies for 20, 30, 40 years with our carriers. I was just mentioning, I think before some of you showed up, I have a AAA insurance agent insured with me. He was an agent for 50 years. The year he retired, they dropped his policy along with everybody else's. And he was just flabbergasted that after all those years, after all that time with the company, not only serving them as an agent, but as a customer, that his policy was just let go without a second thought. And then they started rolling into American Modern. I mean, Farmers, Nationwide, Liberty, the list of people who have been non-renewed really goes on. And this isn't just like we wrote you last year and we're letting you go, though that has happened to plenty of people. It has been pretty hard hit throughout the state. With that in mind, though, I am hopeful that we are working our way back to a healthy market. We really need as many companies as possible to be admitted carriers within the state, to be charging appropriate rates, to create a market where we are sharing risk appropriately. That in general creates a good insurance market. We are seeing a lot of legislative movement within California around the insurance market. I think prior to this, it wasn't really a sexy topic for our lawmakers to take on. It wasn't something they wanted to champion and be able to say, well, I fixed the insurance problem in California. Now it's becoming a critical issue. And because of how many people within the state that it's impacting, it is becoming a hot button issue. And they are more, we are seeing more and more activity from that side where they are looking to insurance companies and to the insurance commissioner to say, what's happening, what needs to be done to fix it. So partly we are seeing some rate increases happening for the carriers who are still in California, or State Farm being one of those. Additionally, we are seeing legislative movement to try and create some changes to the old Prop 103 that can start creating a more healthy climate for insurance companies. So I do think that we are hopefully moving in a positive direction. I am a big advocate for reaching out to your local legislators. Gail Pellerin, John Laird are two people I highly recommend writing letters to, emails to, writing to the insurance commissioner. The more people that are banging on their door about this, the more they are likely to take up this cause and champion it, because they want to be reelected. They're politicians. They are looking for your vote. They want you to feel like you're being heard. So I think that the more voices they hear speaking out, the better it is for everybody. So I'm a big proponent for speaking out to your legislators.
What would those names be?
Yeah, John Laird, Laird. and Gail Pellerin, who I've met with personally, and we sat down with another State Farm agent to have a long conversation about what's happening in California. She's very responsive. I've sent her a letter that she wrote back to personally. I do believe that they are becoming more and more aware and getting a lot more heat about needing to address this situation.
So I think Rick, you and I were talking about the rural versus more urban insurance, right? There's how many rural, 5 million in the state of
The number I've
California?
heard is there's 5 million homes in the Wooey area, the wildland area.
Wildland
not an
areas.
Insignificant number.
Not an incident number, and we seem to be covering a disproportionate percentage of the insurance amounts, or our rates are substantially higher. So I think, Lydia, you were referring to 20, 30-year policies. I mean, they haven't changed for a long time. So it seems like the insurance companies are trying to leverage the WUI areas, I guess, or like this, dropping people to try to force the overall state to increase. Like, what percentage do you think overall the state needs to go up in order for a carrier to start coming back in, right? So like if Allstate or Farmers or State Farm, I mean, what do they want to see from a percentage wise?
In terms of like a rate increase?
Yeah, I mean, like what overall, like how much do you think they really want to bump up the premiums?
That varies wildly between companies, just because certain companies are in a different financial position. Some companies are bearing higher burdens of the wildfire risk areas. So for example, as Farmers and AAA and Nationwide and all of these companies were pulling out of the market and non-renewing people, a huge flood of those people either had the choice of the Fair Plan or State Farm while we were still in the market up until I think May 27th of last year. So as all of these policyholders who are being dropped by their companies came to State Farm, well, I love that as an agent and I would like to see that continue. State Farm was suddenly seeing its burden, especially in wildfire heavy areas, raised pretty substantially. So one of the things that we did to protect our customers, along with filing for rate increases, was to shut down new business, because we can't insure half of California. At this point, we're at about 21% of the market. That's a lot for one carrier. And because we are an admitted carrier, we also have to carry our percentage of the market share for any other admitted carrier who fails. So if, say, the Fair Plan, who is an admitted carrier, does not have enough money to pay their claims, State Farm is an admitted carrier and having to back those claims up. So there is a risk upon risk for insurance carriers within the state, where we have to be very mindful of, we can only take on so much risk. So we need to see other companies come in. Now, that said, Farmers filed for some rate increases. I am hearing that they are starting to write policies here and there, though it seemed to be very limited and not in our area. They're coming into probably some very urban areas where they are starting to gain a little bit more traction. But I think that it's going to be company dependent. I don't think there's a one size fit all number for what rate increase needs to happen.
Okay. So,
Sorry, can I ask this question? Since you brought up California Fair Plan, why is it so much more expensive than?
They don't want to insure houses. So the Fair Plan was designed.
No,
No one does. So the Fair Plan was really designed to be a backstop for the very last resort. It was not meant to carry the burden of this many policies. They pretty recently were getting about 1,000 applications a day. And I can tell you that the head of the Fair Plan is not happy about this. They are panicking, and in a twist of irony, they also can't get California to give them a rate increase. They are the ones who are designed to really be that last bottom end resort. I mean, if you are a Fair Plan broker, you have to sign acknowledging that you have exhausted every potential resource before you can sign someone up for the Fair Plan. You cannot sign them up for the Fair Plan if they're eligible for any other market option. So it is very, very imperative that, one, if you're buying insurance to a Fair Plan broker, that they are doing their due diligence for you and making sure there truly is no one out there. But at this point, that is all that a lot of people have. And it is insanely expensive.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
we're paying 5, almost 6 times what we were paying for our previous policy.
Mostly
And
because
that's
they're
okay.
carrying
And
risky
it still
policies.
doesn't cover, as much as our previous policy.
Oh, yeah.
did.
And so that's a big issue with the Fair Plan, is a lot of
Yeah.
people are taking coverage cuts to try and afford the premium.
Okay, question, if the rates are so high with the Fair Plan and with, your companies and all that, how can they justify saying that, we're charging more and more and more when the claims, I mean, I don't know how many people in this room have had a claim against their homeowners insurance. And most of us are terrified even to file a claim, except under extreme circumstances. And you say that Fair Plan can't cover all of the policies that they've got.
Oh, no, no.
Where's the money going?
No, I'm not saying that they cannot. I'm saying that if they were in a position where they could not,
Yeah.
being an admitted carrier, that all the other carriers, and I'm just using the Fair Plan as an example. They may very well have enough money, but they are not prepared to manage this amount of risk that they have. They don't want this many policies. They want majority of the policies that they currently have to be in the standard market. This should be just for the end all last resort of people to be able to buy. They're not meant to carry the volume of policies they have suddenly been inundated with as all of these carriers have left the market.
Is there a statistic on the Fair Plan's percentage at this point? Like what they're,
I don't have one.
Yeah.
Is there a county?
Yeah, there is.
there
I think it's 3.5%.
so they're carrying 3.5% right
Of
now?
The WUI
Okay,
burden.
all right.
Is there an accounting we could see of where the money goes?
At the state level?
It's run by the insurance industry,
Yeah.
so I would, actually, I mean.
Yeah, like.
Sure, yeah, everything-
Yeah.
everything's public.
Fair Plan.
So I wanted, Rick, for you to kind of share, obviously, your experience, because
Yeah,
you were on the verge of cancellation and kind of clawed your way back.
it did, and I
From the
have
abyss.
first of all, I have a one-page sheet that I will leave, and that will be also on the recording. I've also done, I think, 2 articles for Mountain Network News, which have good resources in them. A 3rd article is coming out in the next issue. And the thing I would tell people to start with, if you're not been canceled or yet been canceled, the best video I've watched is this one called the Wildfire Insurance Town Hall, November 1st, 2023. And there's 4 people on that panel. There's the California State Fire Marshal, which tells you why we have this problem, because houses burn down and it's a total loss and it's expensive to repair. So he talks about what you can do to harden your home. They have the director of the United Policyholders, which is an advocacy group for homeowners. So it's a balanced panel. And then they have the president of the Federation of the Personal Insurance Federation of California. So he represents the insurance industry, and I think he shows beautiful charts of how much California pays on average compared to Florida, compared to the national average. Makes a very good case for the insurance industry that on average, not the people up here, but on average, the state's paying a lower rate than most of the country. And then they also have the deputy commissioner of the California Department of Insurance speaking about how they're trying to figure this thing out. It's a huge problem. So watch the video, you'll learn a lot.
We have that link or something on one of the emails, not only just the name.
Yeah, you have to Google it because the link is just jumbo, but you get one of my handouts or get it off of here, the Mountain Network News, I'll give you one.
Ready? So just a quick.
Yeah.
When is this video made?
It was just made in November 1st, 2023, so it's pretty
Okay.
current. And, some of these things that we don't know the answer to, I think we're getting to them. The second thing is, do not be shy, call the California Department of Insurance. They have a consumer complaint group. I called just to get information. They took my case on. They contacted farmers. Eventually 2 days later, farmers contacted me. Suddenly, even though I was asking for, why did I get canceled? What's going on? So a great resource. The woman, I had almost a 1-hour phone call with her about 2 weeks ago. She said they still don't understand exactly what Farmers is doing. So people that have been canceled with Farmers, it's a puzzle to them, and they're the regulatory agency. What I did learn from her is Farmers, it takes a long time to get an insurance. Lydia knows more about this than I do, but apparently it takes a long time for an insurance company to get a rate increase approved. So Farmers had 3 or 4 rate increase requests in with the Department of Insurance for years, a couple of years or more. One of them that affected me just got, after 2 years, was approved for a average 20% rate increase. It turns out that my rate was pretty low with Farmers, and it was even lower with State Farm. But because of this 20%, they gave me, I got renewed, and I'll tell you how I got renewed. I still got a 3% rate increase, but it's still a fraction of what the state fair plan is. So I'm happy to be renewed. And I'm actually okay with the 30% increase because I had AAA for 30 years and the rate hardly changed. You know, it was $800 and ended with $1,200 after 30 years. So it was a very small rate increase. Local resources, you guys, I'm an advocate of the Fire Safe Council, and I'm also an advocate of Firewise. And Steve will talk about why Firewise is, you should be part of Firewise. Here's how I got canceled. I had to dig in. When you are canceled, according to the insurance commissioner, you're entitled to know the reason you're canceled. If they use some kind of scoring program, they need to tell you what the scoring is. And if they have some, they asked me to pay $125 to have my home inspected and to get the certificate. I'm entitled to a copy of that report, which I actually have never gotten, but I was told by my agent. And by the way, do work with your agent. I mean, they're on your side, but their hands are tied. If they say they have to cancel everybody, it's not that they want to cancel you.
Real quick, you said you didn't get a copy of the report. Is that
Not
because
yet.
they haven't sent it?
The state, I think, contacted them, said, you need to give them the copy. My agent said, of course you're gonna get a copy. It'll come in a couple of weeks. Well, that was a month ago. And the woman came out, she took photos. She was really nice. She said, contact your agent in 2 weeks. We'll give you a copy of the report. So I'm not even sure. The purpose of this report was to get something called wildfire prepared certificate. And so, I wanted to know where I was deficient and where I want to get the certificate. I paid the $125. I still not sure why I didn't get the certificate. About a month and a half later, I did get an email saying, there's some debris under your deck. There were minor things, I think, and I don't know. And that's where April can come in. Her company does this. They help homeowners get the certificate. There was absolutely no hand holding. There's very little communication.
Your inspector, was that from Millennium?
It was Millennium, and the
That's-
woman's name was Lisa. That did my inspection.
Because
Yeah,
you know what, she was very nice.
yeah, she's very nice. But there were two parts to my cancellation. The reason I got canceled, and this is on the Mountain Network News, the V-Risk is another company that does this aerial photography, and they have maps, and they know how much vegetation, they know the slope, and they know the access. And they get a score on each one of those. And I guess prior years, I had a score of 2. And that's all they told me is, they didn't even tell me what my score was, but I finally got it out of them. And I found the algorithm by myself on this 200-page document. Anyway, I figured out the reason I got canceled is because they said I lived on a dead-end road. And so my score went from a 2 to a 5. And then I asked them, I said, if I had a 2, would you approve me? I didn't even know what the score would be to get approval. And they set it up for chain of command. Yeah, so the long and the short of it is, I was able to prove that I had egress, and they went back to the 2 and they said, yeah, we're gonna renew you. So that's good.
How long did that take you?
Well, this was October, so this is February. So I've been working, I'm still trying to get the certificate, and I was working on it this morning. So half of October, November, December, January, 3.5, 4 months I've been working on. But I got renewed about 4 weeks ago. But I did tell the state insurance department, I still want the certificate. In the letter that they did finally send me from the corporate office, a letter of that also CC the state insurance bureau, saying, what they were going to do. And there were 2 boxes for discounts. And what I learned from the state insurance bureau is they're trying to get, and I know State Farm does this, they're trying to get discounts for homeowners that make efforts to make their house more survivable, which makes sense, right? If you don't have a total loss of your house, insurance company benefits, why not give you a discount? So Firewise is one of the discounts, and because of Steve's hard work, I had the Firewise certificate, but I noticed neither of my boxes were checked. And I don't think the state has figured out whether Farmers is going to give a discount or not, but I think Lydia would know more. I think part of this new legislation that hasn't been exactly passed yet, but it's been written, they want the insurance companies to give homeowners some kind of discount And then they have to figure out what it is and it has to be very clear. So, I think from my perspective, going through this, we're not done with this problem. This is gonna keep coming back. Because we've all seen these fires are getting bigger, more common, and they're burning hotter and they're hitting urban areas. So I think some of you have been up here long enough, you remember 1985 fire. Scotty worked on that fire as a volunteer fireman. That, we were lucky, that fire just kind of rolled along more or less, and they were able to put a fire truck in every house. And I'm gonna just finish by one size does not fit all. I'm not gonna go on any further, but I'm a believer in hardening your home, just for a lot of reasons. I'm 70 years old. I don't want to be rebuilding my house when I'm 75. And I also don't want to be out there hacking blackberry bushes anymore. So I'm doing some of the things in Wildfire Prepared that's gonna make it easier for my house to be maintained. I might show some photos later what I've done, but
So as a follow-up, so you got your notice in October.
yes.
So when you get your notice, and Lydia, you might have, can weigh in on this. How long do you have to complete, go through what Rick went through, or like,
Well, it's gonna be different for every insurance company.
Right.
And I called, right away, I called Farmers and they said, and they have a consumer line, and just with somebody in Missouri or something, they knew nothing about this. And they got their manager on, they finally said, you have to have everything done by the 30th of October, and this is the middle of October. And if you go to the webpage, Wildfire Prepared, it says it takes minimum of a month or months to get the certificate. So there was that made me worried. That's when I contacted the state and I said, how do you have a program that takes months and you get 2 weeks to do it? So I don't think we know. I think the other thing that Farmers did send me is a consolation before I got renewed, is they said, we understand you spent a lot of money trying to get the certificate, so we're going to give you till March 12th. So they gave me extra months. That's what my policy counsel said. If you have the certificate March 12th, we'll renew you for 1 year.
but were you given a reason for the cancellation up front?
No, they just said cancel. But then, as I said, I've been probing.
Yeah,
And then I got the score, and then I figured out the score, and then I said, if I change the score, would you renew me? And they reviewed the reason I wanted the score changed, and then they renewed me.
because I got canceled by Berkshire.
What's the scale of that score? You mentioned 2 and 5 and 2 and
Yeah,
3.
so
What's the scale?
I think it can go up to 10. I've heard places are counseling people that have anything above 0. So every insurance company in like up in Tahoe, where the fire risk is tremendously higher because of the pine trees, people are just getting canceled. There's like, you can't get a score. They want 0, and so that's pretty much you have to live on in a flat area with no vegetation. But for me, it was a score 2 for Farmers. Farmers said 2 we'll take, and it's considered low risk, more or less, which one wonders about that, but.
So Rick, I'll
Yeah.
add to it.
Yeah, Nancy had the same thing.
So Rick and I have worked lockstep in this because I got my notice in December, which said December 29th, and said you have to answer it by January 12th. I thought, what the heck? So I looked at it and I checked it all off and said, it's fine. My house is actually very fire safe. I mean, in terms of we don't have shrubbery around it and everything. And so I sent it back in. They came back and said, we're not gonna renew you because you're a 95033. And I said, well, what about this fire certificate? Why do I have to have it when the fire department signed me off already? And I said, well, we want everybody to have it. So I was working with Rick on everything, looked at what he'd done, and good Lord, they want to move his hot tub and all kinds of things. I said, well, my house is pretty good, other than I have a 100-year-old rose bush right up in front of my house. It's pretty trimmed and it's native, but it's probably 2 feet from my house. You're not allowed to have anything planted in the dirt near your house. And I said, please, somebody tell me how a 100-year-old rose bush needs to be killed in order to satisfy some bureaucrat. I'm not gonna do it. And they said, that would prevent me from getting the stupid thing. And Farmers said, well, just do it anyway. And I said, well, why would I go into a system that I know for sure I'm not going to get it? So that then I'll be in some system that everybody's gonna look at some point in time. Not gonna happen. So I did all the things. I contacted the insurance commissioner. I appealed with farmers. I went to their main headquarters and went through all that. And I just got the notice yesterday that said, well, we see, and I said, also, they want me to put 6 inches of fireproof siding because our siding, we've been here 47 years and we built our house that long ago. And we've been with farmers for 46 years, with never a fire claim. And they said, we have to put a 6 inches of fireproof brick or something around the bottom of the house. Are you kidding me? That'd be the ugliest thing ever. But the point was, they said, well, here's the way it's gonna work. If your policy expires after March 11th, we are not gonna, anybody after March 11th, we are not renewing unless they have a wildfire certificate. And they told me, if you get your wildfire certificate, then we will consider renewing them. And I told them to stick it where the sun don't shine. And I found another policy through a broker in Los Gatos, and I'm gonna cancel all of my farmers' policies.
Interesting.
Of every kind. So I'll give it to Don Williams.
Yep.
Don Williams broker.
So-
That worked.
So is that something that April would be able to weigh in on?
Yeah,
or-
yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
April's, I have not, I've just learned about April through the Fire Safe Council, which is a great resource again. And her company works with the Santa Clara Fire Safe Council, and her company specializes in trying to get the certificate. And one of the questions Nancy and I both had, well, if we get the certificate, they didn't even say they renew us. Now they are saying that.
Yeah.
And April can speak to people. She's worked with homeowners to help them get the certificate. So it is possible, and I'm still optimistic, and that's why I'm glad, I didn't know that, Nancy, because
Yeah, just got.
I'm renewed anyway, but
Just got the message
but
from. yesterday.
ironically, my policy is
Because I
the
can
12th,
find
but you think it'd be the 11th of the day.
So maybe April,
We want to hear from you.
yeah, maybe April, if you want to kind of share a little bit about what your company does, and obviously it's very relevant, so. And you all can't see her, but she's on the Zoom, so. Oh, I have to unmute you. There you go.
Okay, there we go. All right, so thank you, Rick. It was good to hear your story, and thank you for, saying good things about us. My name's April, and I work for Allied Disaster Defense. And, we're all former firefighters here, inspectors that started out with this company a couple years ago, doing wildfire inspections and trying to help people harden their homes. This was before that insurance crisis hit. We were hoping, we had partnered, we're a strategic partner with IBHS back then a couple years ago, because we thought just like everybody else, helping people get that wildfire prepared certificate was going to help people get a discount on their insurance. And that's what we intended to happen. We wanted people to harden their homes, and we wanted them to get a discount, and they still can with the FAIR plan. And some other, a few other companies, I believe, if you have that certificate. But anyway, what happened within the last year with people losing their insurance or being forced to get the certification, it created a different kind of dynamic for us. And we saw a lot of people who were very shocked and disappointed. And so what we started doing is offering like consultation services for people who are going through this difficult and aggravating process. What I do is I offer people the ability to reach out, give me a phone call, give us a phone call, provide your information, go on our website, fill out your information, you'll get a call back from us. And sometimes people just don't know where to start, and our company gives you a place to start. We give people hopefully a little bit of peace of mind before they proceed to the next step. We explain all the procedures, all the regulations, all of the requirements needed to get that IBHS certification. We do also provide free, like a very basic service where people can email me or text me photos from their property. I think with Rick, we did a quick Zoom, a little Zoom meeting where he walked around his property, and I kind of pointed a couple things out. And this kind of helps people get into the mindset of what IBHS is requiring, and whether or not they want to move forward with the certificate, because it is very strict. It is very extensive. Not everybody can do it. we also give advice and help to people who do not wish to proceed with the certificate, but still want to harden their homes. We give advice of what and resources for what they need to do. Our company also, we also do some of the home hardening ourselves if needed. So we also inspect homes for ember resistant vents. We install the ember resistant vents, every type. We don't sell any vents. We use Vulcan, Brand Guard, wildfire defense mesh, anything that has to do with home hardening. And we use all products that are listed on the state fire marshal approved products list for all of our installations. So I think we're a good resource, whether people use our services or not. I think we, for the most part, provide a lot of peace of mind for people and at least give them a direction to go in when they feel kind of helpless. So I think we're very good at that. We do have inspectors in San Jose, and we've been inspecting a couple of homes that were referred by Santa Clara Fire Safe Council, and installing vents, measuring vents. But we are expanding, and we cover a lot of different areas in California. So yeah, if anybody ever wants to chit chat or just, feels a little bit lost and doesn't know quite where to start with their home hardening or with this certificate, we can hopefully give some advice.
And did you share the cost and time? Typically, how long it takes?
Sure. So our typical cost to go out to a home to do an in-person inspection, where the person receives a comprehensive wildfire inspection, a full report, and then help along the way. That cost is $500. That's for our inspection. However, that $500 can be used toward any work that is done by us, such as ember resistant vents, which are needed for the certificate. So it's not something we'd like to, take advantage of people for, but it can, that cost can be applied toward any work that you do. But for free, we're always giving free webinars, and we help fire safe councils, and we set up a lot of booths at safety events and safety fairs for people. Community events are all free, and people can always contact us for free and maybe send photos and do a very basic evaluation of their home for free if needed before they decide to go through with the bigger assessment.
So April, does that 500 include the fee that IBHS requires of $125? Is that, you don't have to, you'll submit to them, and or did you?
No, that doesn't include that fee. That's separate, and that is paid directly to IBHS. So the 500 is only for Allied and our services. What happens is, just to give you a little walkthrough and timeline, like what was asked, say we go out, we do a full inspection, give the report, we give the homeowner all the recommendations that they would need in order to get that certificate. We also will tell them, okay, structurally, you don't qualify to get this certificate there, because of certain things that might prevent them from getting it, like giant, really big trees in the 5-foot zone, or a structure, too many structures that are close to the home. So there's different things that disqualify people from getting it. Usually we try to, as hard as we can, to weed out and to evaluate before we go out there so that people don't waste their time and money. So usually we try our very best to do that beforehand, but once in a while there are people who won't qualify. But for people who do, we help them along the way. We let them know everything they need to get it done. We provide them an estimate for any work if they choose to have us do any of the work. Let's say a couple weeks go by, let's say somebody needed a couple of ember resistant vents, and they did some defensible space. They removed some of their plants, and they're ready to go. At this time, they would they would tell me, okay, we've made these updates and changes, we're ready to go. We take some new photos, and I give them a code that is specifically used for Allied. They apply on the IBHS, the Wildfire Prepared website, they use our code, and instead of IBHS sending an inspector to their house, they directly contact me. I submit all the photos and the report, and go directly to them. So they evaluate, and then they're able to decide whether or not the person gets the certificate. So we kind of take a back route a little bit. It may or may not be quicker, but usually it is, but we can't really promise anything. Once in a while, they'll come back with, oh, we see a plant that still needs to be taken out. And so the customer will remove that plant or make a change. And then we don't have to submit all over again. We just share the new photos and the updates, and the person, the customer or homeowner will get the certificate directly from IBHS. So the process can take anywhere from a couple weeks to about, I'd say, a month, depending on how much needs to be done. It really does vary, but it's definitely a little bit faster if you go through, use our services. If you go directly to IBHS, there really isn't a phone number or contact to, get very much help or information before. They kind of put the information out there, the resources on the website, and they assume that you are doing all of the work on your own. So that's where we differ. We're able to give a lot more advice and help and guidance before that application is submitted.
So I wanted to make an observation. When she says a month, that's not my house. My house, just to get the tree guys out, because I knew Agricon from the fire seconds, I was able to get them out in a week, but that was really unusual because of the storm. They've been out twice. I'm not sure we're even done. It was the reason I would go with something like this is $500 compared to for my house. And your house might be different. You might just pass because everything's ready. But I had trees too close, and I have a little bit of a hill, and you could make this 5-foot barrier that's non-flammable. But maybe if you're like me, you had to move a bunch of plants, and I don't want to go out there and pull out blackberry bushes. So I'm putting, they want flagstones or gravel down. So if you're doing it yourself, it could take months. If you hire somebody, but why I would, so I'm just saying this, the $500 for me sounds like a lot to pay for this help. On the other hand, if I could avoid it, like doing something that cost $1,000 that I didn't need to do, I think it's well worth it. And honestly, I think I've spent close to $8,000 already with the tree trimming and putting this non-flammable siding around my on all the vertical surfaces where my deck is. I moved my hot tub myself, but if you had to hire somebody, and I tried to get out of moving the hot tub, but April said, no, they're gonna make you move the hot tub. So, but
5 feet.
what?
The hot tub can't be within 5 feet of it.
It has to be on the other side of the 5 feet. And then they want it to be 5 feet of non-flammable around it. So.
Is it like a wood enclosed hot tub? Like what? Because the fiberglass in the water is not burning.
It's, this gets onto a different
It's
subject.
a water source.
It's,
Right?
yeah.
Can't they pump out of it? No. So
There's a reason for it probably, and it is when the hot tub catches on fire, it is the plastic's real flammable and toxic. But I don't know the reason why exactly. Some of these things, one size fits all doesn't, like trimming redwood trees up, to the sky, doesn't make any sense to me. Because there's a branch hanging over the 5-foot area, that's not gonna burn your house down, but I did it anyway.
and were those steps that they gave you, or were you just kind of trial and error and then you would?
Well, I tried to interpret, and then they don't, you can't call them up and ask them, but you can have April. She
Right.
did the free one where I, just showed her what I did so far, and she said, you look like you're almost there. But I think it's good to have the guidance. If you're gonna take this on, and the IBS website tells you what you wanted to do, and it's pretty draconian, but you ask yourself, do I really have to have 8 feet of space between any shrub that's higher than 1.5 feet? Turns out that that's not, April can tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that's a hard requirement. So why would I want to move all my shrubs around in the 30-foot zone if I don't have to? So that's where I think,
30 feet or
30 feet away from your house.
what's the difference between
Yeah,
30 feet,
30
5 feet?
feet or.
well, you can have stuff in the 30-foot area that's flammable. You can't have anything flammable with a 5-foot border. But the shrubs that are in the 30-foot border have to have a certain spacing, and the trees have to have a certain spacing. And that's all on the IBHS website. But they also say, strange language, we're very strict about the 5 foot, which if you interpret that, then they're not very strict. And April has a lot of
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
They're not as strict with the 30 feet, right, April? They let more
They
things
are,
slip.
yes, so the most, I would word it a little different. I would say the 5 foot zone is the most bare, where you can't have anything, not even a blade of grass within the 5 foot zone from the edge of your house. If you have a deck or pillars that extend your roof line or extend from your house, then that's where they consider the end of your house starts at. So you have to make sure that there's 5 feet clearance of everything. You can only have not even a plant, not even a weed in the ground. So bare dirt,
5 feet from the.
decomposed granite, anything, concrete, rocks, but that's about it. And then within the 30 zone is where it gets a little, complicated. Your plants they're all about spacing. So within the 30 zone, or up to your property line, you have to make sure you don't have any continuous hedges or trees that are very close together. They want that spacing, that fire break, that fuel break, to be shown. So you have to prove that, and it might involve removing, trees that are too close together. The tree canopies have to be 10 feet apart, canopy to canopy in the 30-foot zone. Your plants have to be either double the height of the plant or up to 10 feet, whichever comes first. So it can get a little tricky, but that's where we come in. We measure everything. I'll post some of I'll see if I can upload some of the requirements in the chat.
Right. So maybe we can segue into the Firewise then.
Yeah.
Talk about neighborhood.
So how many of you are familiar with Firewise USA? About half, maybe. All right, so real quick, Firewise USA is a kind of under the umbrella of the NFPA, which is the National Fire Protection Association. It's a big national nonprofit, and they do all kinds of fire protection things, but Firewise is kind of the one that's focused on the WUI, which is the wildland urban interface, which is us, right? And of course, what's bringing all this on is that WUI area is getting larger and more densely populated. And we've had multiple drought seasons, and so we've naturally had more wildfires. And so what they've done is they've created the Firewise USA organization, which is solely focused on helping people like us figure out how to mitigate wildfire and how to survive wildfire. And the insurance industry they're well aware of all this stuff too, and they see the losses from the various wildfires that we've all experienced. And here we are sitting in exactly the same environment as Paradise and some of these other bad wildfires. And what they're saying is that things need to change. Either we quit, doing insurance, or people start changing the way these environments look. And I think that's where Firewise comes in for the resident and the community, is to show people, in a community way, what we are right now today is the Firewise USA organization is just a bunch of communities that banded together and followed the best practices available to mitigate the risk of fire. And that's fundamentally what it is. And I guess the short story here is that we live in a very highly volatile wildfire environment. And it's exacerbated by drought seasons and winter storms that drop tons of dead oak all over the forest floor. And so we need to really start doing more to our properties and our homes to, you know, just to get through this kind of stuff, right?
In roads.
Yeah, and really, I mean, I'm here to tell you, I just recently been through I'm still in it, but it's a National Forest Service training on community wildfire mitigation best practices, right? These are professionals that have lived this stuff for 20, 30 years in some cases. They know what wildfire does and they know how to mitigate it. And believe it or not, you know, a lot of people say, well, you know, where we live, if there's a wildfire, let's just get out of here, we're done. That's not true. So, you know, there are catastrophic fires, but there are also houses and structures that can survive them if the proper mitigation practices are followed. And I've seen it. I haven't seen it in person, of course, but I've seen it on multiple videos where you can have a huge canopy fire and a house that was properly mitigated and did all the right things survives. And the fire's only, you know, 30 to 100 feet away, and it's upslope even. And the house, you look at the picture and you're going, that house is gone. And then you look at the fire after it goes over and the house is still there, not even touched. So it can be done, you know, and it's just a matter, I mean, it can be a lot of work. It can be a lot of money, depending on your situation, but it can be done. And if we do it, then the insurance company has no excuse to not insure us because we've taken every step possible to mitigate that risk.
Who wants to live in a concrete box though?
Well, no, and you don't, that's a fallacy. You really, you know, that 0 to 5 foot, what they call the immediate zone.
I know.
Is critical, no doubt, but you can have green stuff in that zone that doesn't burn, right? What they really concerned about, what really starts the 0 to 5 feet zone issue is that plants, while they look green and everything, they generally have a lot of dry stuff in the flower bed or in the ground below it, right? And that's where embers pop in and ignite. And once you get good, everyone should know, I mean, radiant heat and all that good stuff. Once you get a fire going and there's fuel, what does it do? It consumes it. And so that's when they talk about the 0 to 5 foot zone, that's the kind of stuff they're talking about. The other thing is vents that go into your attic. If you have like 1/4 inch or better screen on them, they're not going to do a bit of good. So they recommend 1/8 inch screening behind.
Not code compliant.
Well, yeah, not anymore, but it used to be, right? And many houses still have that stuff. You know, wood lattice under your deck, you know, all these things are bad, but great for wildfire, right? So, and there are things you can do and you can fix. And there's all kinds of stuff that you can do for very little money, very little time.
Question for April. Do you know if the fireproof paints are satisfying the E requirements?
Coatings, you mean?
You're
It's
supposed to
fireproof.
box your eaves.
That's
What was the question?
Fireproof paints satisfying the
Oh.
Requirement?
E requirement.
I don't think at this time they do. We've been looking into the intumescent paints for a while, and we've found quite a few that we've been looking at. I think all of those are being tested right now. As far as IBHS is concerned, they do not accept them for the eaves for the Wildfire Prepared Home Plus certificate. You have to have either the hardy board, the fiber cement. construction right now. So I think a lot of that is still in testing. We have not tested any of them yet. We only go by what's on the approved for the state fire marshal right now. And none of those are on there that I know of.
So Steve, on the Firewise, so you kind of oversaw the creation of the Firewise community up here, right?
Right.
Villa, and then a few of us on the other side,
Right.
reap the reward of that. From an insurance perspective, though, I mean, like, what is the carrier's view? Because if you have one little pocket of Firewise, then you have a big stretch of non-Firewise, and then another, you know, like, is it really going to matter that much from a insurability standpoint, right? I mean, it's just curiosity, like my own curiosity.
Well,
State Farm.
You mean for a zip code, right?
I hear what
Huh?
you have to say.
You mean for a zip code?
Well, I mean, like, if they're not gonna be looking at me in a Firewise area, I don't think, and deciding whether to cancel me or not, right?
Firewise, I doubt with most companies is going to make or break whether or not they non-renew a home. We, as State Farm, we provide discounts for Firewise. So if you are in a Firewise community, it's a 2% discount. It's not earth shattering. It's not life changing, but it's something. So it's something I ask every homeowner, regardless of where they are, whether they're part of. We have a bigger discount for property level discounts. And it's if you have a hardened property, we don't go to the extent that the wildfire certificate does, but the main considerations that State Farm looks at for the bigger property level discount is we want to see fireproof siding, which is stucco or cement fiber or hardy board. We want to have a fire resistant roof, so that means metal, comp shingle, asphalt, stone, hot mop even applies, but what we can't do is wood shake. So wood shake obviously doesn't, but if it's a fire resistant roof and it's got fire resistant siding, we also want to know that all decks and porches are clear of combustible materials. And if you have at least 6 inches between the ground and where the siding starts, so that usually tends to pertain to people who are on crawl space, not slab. But if you meet those requirements, you get that discount and you don't have to go to a certification. I, as your agent, certify that. And that is something that I believe more and more insurance companies are picking up on, because as he mentioned, we do see the value in customers taking proactive measures and having houses, you know, versus even mine. We haven't redone our siding. We have plywood. I understand if State Farm, you know, has a problem with that at some point. We're fortunately trying to do it just because we know it's risk reducing.
What about
Steel siding?
Yep, absolutely fabulous. Yeah, so metal, I should mention that metal, stucco,
how about
or
solid
cement
block
fiber.
homes?
What's that?
Solid block homes.
No,
I do want to say,
You let me put siding on my.
I know, and you're beautiful with.
But on the Firewise, again, though, I mean, really, the benefit would be if it continued.
yeah,
To progress,
yeah,
right?
I don't want to understate the value.
No, so I mean, that's kind of
Firefighters.
where I was headed, was like, you need to get past these little pockets.
Yeah.
well, that's what I was gonna get to, is Firewise starts at the community level.
Mhm.
And what you learn when you go through all this is finding out that, yeah, you know, it's like your neighbor, for example, you know, you do everything, they do nothing. Your house burns down, right? Question?
Yeah, I have a question, is, fire insurance, gonna be the same every month throughout the year? Because during the wintertime, there is no chances of fire, and so it should be much cheaper then, and there's a few
For a roof cave, right?
months in summer, the fires really happen.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's how they just kind of aggregate it, you know, they take the risk and they know it's mostly in the summer in terms of.
Well, most of your claims aren't from fire anyway, right? They're gonna be
Correct.
from
Wildfire is
rain
not
and,
our only risk. I mean, we see an enormous volume of claims from water losses. So right next to fire, water losses are disastrous for insurance companies, which is why I will say very clearly, one of the best things you can do is make sure your roof is in good condition. So if you want your insurance carrier to drop you, let your roof go. Having a roof that is in really, really poor maintained condition can be a reason for you to get personally dropped. Because now most companies, so like State Farm, will do re-inspections. We give our customers more than a year to respond to anything that needs to be addressed at their property. So if we come out and we inspect the roof, and we say, it looks like we have some problems. Your composition shingle has a lot of granular loss, or we are seeing missing shingles, or we are seeing rust or decay. They have an option. We might say you need to replace your roof. We've had customers who've gone and got a roofer out there and said, nope, you just need to patch this area here and you got another 10 years at least in your roof. We've accepted that. That's fine. but they are looking to mitigate their losses. And sometimes that comes back to you, is that you're gonna have some responsibility. So roofs are a big deal for insurance companies. If you're looking to try and safeguard yourself as well, having your roof in good condition is something that it's worth maintaining. But yeah, I will also agree that Firewise is a great program, and the more people in our area who are participating in that, it's obviously a widespread benefit for all of us to be doing that communal effort of trying to safeguard our houses from wildfire, making sure that we have, clear roads, we have easy access, we are maintaining that 5-foot defensible space and being, thoughtful about how we are protecting our properties.
And to follow on that too, when you work as a community, and there's a fire, right? And the community's working together to make sure your signage is right. Like if they're trying to, if your house catches on fire and they can't find your house, you have a sign on, your roads are up to date, your roads are clear. You don't have enough stuff to chip, but you don't want to pay a company to come for a whole day. So the community shares the cost. Steve has done an incredible job of organizing these mitigation things across neighborhoods. So we all put in a couple $100 and he finds a chipper that does 12 homes at a time. So there's an economy of scale. We have a neighbor that's maybe like me, too old to get out there and trim, and the younger guys come and help me out, and we help each other. So I think it's really important to work as a community, because I share a property line with a neighbor who's redwood trees are like, he hasn't cleaned up underneath them for 10 years. And I said, Jimmy, could you clean it up? Because there's that relationship. He cleans up that. It wouldn't burn his house down, but it might send embers over to my house. So Firewise is a fantastic program from a community level. And I'm saying this after being on the Fire Safe Council, which is really huge. I think they got an $8 million budget this year. But sometimes they forget about the community level, and they're operating on, they're doing these broad forest restorations for Midpen. Doesn't do anything for us. And they ran out of money for chipping this year. So we're not going to run out at the community level. Because we got guys like Steve.
At the community level, we can, in a Firewise community, a recognized Firewise community, you get automatically eligible for grant funding from these organizations, the various county and state and regional, even national organizations. You can go in and apply for grants. Now we have, where we live, we're surrounded by a much of the land around our particular community is unmanaged. So it's privately owned, or even, agency owned. The San Jose Water Company, they have management plans. Santa Cruz and San Mateo County have management plans in place, but there's nobody addressing, a large surrounding area on our community. That will take a lot more resources, right? We can't afford, nor could we possibly, get enough volunteers to deal with that property. It's 110 acres. It's redwood forest, second growth mostly. And that's a threat, right? That's a risk to us. So for example, if that property caught fire, the energy of that fire is going to be enormous. And so if we're not what they call fire adapted in our community, that fire is going to pretty much run right through it and destroy it. So even though we do everything to our property, we still have these other threats. But if we mitigate that other threat by doing like a 200-foot shaded fuel break all the way around our community boundaries, the insurance industry will love that, because it not only slows down, but in many cases stops the fire. So it's feasible to do something like that. It'll take a lot more than just, hard work and volunteerism. It'll take some money from the government or government agencies. But things like that can be done. And the only way to get it done is through community effort. And Firewise is a perfect mechanism for that.
I have a question. When you're using the term community, it's not the 95033 talk community. Are you specifically saying, there's a lot of private roads? Are you, is a private road with upwards of 5 to 20 homes, are you gonna call that a community, and then can that road become a Firewise community?
Exactly. Even
What's the
three
minimum?
houses
What's the
on a
threshold?
dead end road.
What's the minimum threshold for firewalls?
I read that.
It's like, it depends on acreage really, but it can be, you know, as little as 2. Of course, it's, you know, not likely that you get Firewise recognition on 2 homes. But if those 2 homes are on a big swath of land that's up against another urban environment, they would
What do you consider a
absolutely.
big swath of land?
Well, 110 acres is big, or even 20 or 30. I mean, it's all about,
That's a hell of a range.
it's all, well, I mean, I don't know what the metrics are for Firewise, but the bottom line is what they're looking for is these communities to just spawn out, right? And make everybody safer by doing the, you know, the mitigation best practices. And so when there is a fire, it can be managed and it can't necessarily get out of control. And that's the goal, is to get wherever you live, whatever part of the land or county, state, whatever it is, you want to try to remove that huge wildfire risk, right? And that's the name of the game.
Just real quick, June, to answer your question, there are a lot of small Firewise communities up here already.
Yeah.
Some of them as small as 8 homes, 6
If there's
homes.
one that's butted up against yours that you could join or start your.
Well, you're
own
pretty close to
And get
ours,
multiple,
but
and then you break it into pods. Yours? We're a couple of miles away.
Couple of miles,
That's
that's,
nothing.
I mean, we could almost include you in ours.
we do have a huge swath of Summit.
You're not down to something.
Oh, I know, but
No.
I'm just saying that it could,
We
well, you
gotta
guys
do
could
our
form
own.
it, you got enough homes down there. Yeah.
So Steve, if somebody wanted to research starting a Firewise program in their neighborhood, what would they do?
Contact me, Karen,
Yeah, Fire Safe Santa Clara has a group that'll just help you get started. They'll sponsor you. And Santa Cruz, I think, has the same thing. Santa Cruz Fire Safe will
both
sponsor you.
counties fire safe councils have everything you need to know about that. And, you know, we've got a website that's pretty good right now, but it'll be a whole lot better at some point.
We being your particular.
Our community has a Google site, that's pretty, you know, primitive, but it, you know, it works, and there's a lot of information on that. The NFPA and firewise.org is a good resource to go to, and they tell you exactly how to start your own Firewise community.
Specs, your stuff,
Your fire.
your other work, who inspects it, or your hierarchy.
How do you
What-
get certified?
Yeah, what's the certification process like?
Well, Firewise USA, they give you all the things you need to do, and there's, you know, several required things. It's about 7 or 8 things you have to actually achieve in a, you know, before you can apply for your certificate or your recognition. It's not really a certification, but what it is really just, doing educational events in your community, organizing the Firewise committee, having a plan for how you're gonna tackle, you know, the issues in your community, and then measure both, you do surveys, so you find out what your risk is, you know, how many acres of.
I think what the question was, is when you've done all of that, where do you go? Do you just call them up and say, hey, we're done, come up and inspect?
You submit your plan, and you submit all of your survey data and numbers, right? How much work you've done in terms of both, time and actual expenses to contractors, you know, what have you. And you meet the minimum. I mean, it's so easy that, in our neighborhood, it's 219, homes, right? In our boundaries, our Firewise boundaries. And it's $28 per year per home. That's the minimum threshold, right?
It can be sweat equity too. It's
Yeah,
that-
it can
that
be
the homeowner
based in
does.
time, it can be based in monetary, you know, exchanges, whatever. But it's pretty trivial. I mean, when we applied for Firewise, our, you know, Central Summit, watershed Firewise community killed the financial requirements. It was just
you're never gonna be writing out a check.
You're
to a
not,
Firewise.
it's
Thing.
not,
gonna
it's
be
very
how much
easy.
money you've spent on doing what you need to do. about it.
Individual, collectively,
Yeah.
everybody,
I
yeah.
mean,
I
it's
mean, I
pretty
personally
easy.
probably did enough work to
Yeah.
qualify.
You get the tree guys out,
Few
and all
times.
that
Yeah.
money's taken care
Yeah,
of.
the recognition part is very easy to obtain. The challenge is that you commit to a 3-year plan. And every year you have to, you measure yourself and to Firewise, your progress on that plan so that they can see that you're continually improving your situation. So but it's still not hard. I mean, it's pretty easy. The hard part is when you have, people that just, they either they're not aware of the issue
I'm not gonna cooperate.
or they don't care about the issue. And all those things can be dealt with too. And you can get a lot of help from the various, local and government agencies to do that. So it's really feasible. And then it gets to the bigger scope of things where you have this huge 110-acre threat right behind you, right surrounding you basically. What do you do about that? And that's where you get more partnerships involved. You look at what, it's not here today, but, you guys have all seen the various programs, the Summit Road, shaded fuel break,
Thinking Larry Law.
millions of dollars there, right? That's a government funded, grant funded project. They're gonna do the same thing on, San Jose Soquel Road. All these things are great. We can get in, we can piggyback on some of those things, get involved in those things, and even do more. For example, my task on our plan is to find a way to fund a shaded fuel break, around the perimeter of our community. And the good news is there's 2 big San Jose waterworks and, what's the other one?
Mid-Penn?
No,
Lexington Watershed.
Oh, Santa Clara Valley
Yeah.
Water District.
Lexington Watershed, I don't know.
well, there's,
No, but they got
there's
$7 million right now.
There's 2
to do
big,
work.
what
Yeah,
they
there's
call,
two big
community wildfire protection plans that are in place on our northern border. And those, they have some really good ideas, really good, participation and lots of money. So we could work with them, maybe expand some of the things they're doing or, into our community. And we can do the same thing ourselves and go out and try to find a way to fund a shaded fuel break around the rest of the unmanaged land. And if we did that, and we did, 95% of what we could do in our own, local community, we could easily survive almost any kind of wildfire. I mean, it's all about having the ability and the landscape to slow or stop the fire.
Is April still with us?
Yeah, she's still on. I had a real follow-up question though. So, because we were talking, Rick, about chipping.
Yeah.
So the Fire Safe Council previously would provide chipping services and they're not seemingly doing that.
They still
Well, there's good news on that. I commented on that last year.
Okay,
They went to the county and they got the amount increased to 200,000. It used to be 50, it was 25, then at 50, and the last I heard it was 75. They said, we gotta get an inflation adjustment. They did. They got 200,000 for this coming year for Santa Clara's. But now I understand we used to bridge the 2 counties together on Summit, and now I think the counties are doing their own chipping programs. So
Well, they have a built-in mechanism that says, okay, you apply for this free chipping. And if you're not in a particular zip code, they just disqualify it. I think we can deal with that because our community is straddles 2 counties. And we haven't officially done it yet, but I think we can. So in other words, we should be able, our Firewise community should be able to access the free chipping programs from both counties. Without being in one
Good.
county or the
I have
other.
a question. Does everybody up here get Mountain Network News?
Yes.
Everybody? I think that we used to put we still do, the calendars in there. And Steve, let's make sure that we get your programs, if you're okay, in there too. So that everybody, as much information we can get out to the community. Because again, this, whatever the insurance companies are doing, that's a different problem, but keeping our homes safe and our kids and our animals and all that, and being able to still live up here that's all kind of always up to us. And so I do encourage people every year to do the basic mitigation, before you go on vacation to Italy or wherever you go, or go visit your grandkids, get the brush off your roof, and don't have
Out of
to
your
throw it up the
gutters.
side of your house,
Yeah, I mean, it's all the main stuff is pretty easy. The homeowners can do it and everything. The other stuff out past 30 feet and 100 feet, that gets more expensive and a lot more larger scope, but it can be done. I mean, we can form enough resources to do this stuff. And where we can't do it ourselves, then we go out and we try to get government, money to do that.
The question back there, and then this guy too, both these guys.
When they assess your fire hazard score, do they take into account orchards? Because orchards appear to me is one of the biggest fire breaks there is. They're plowed every year, and it looks, it's a large standoff from the burning tree.
Lumberjack Way is a huge fire
Yep.
up there. I mean, those trees
Oh, yeah.
are gonna catch each other.
Well, yeah, anything like a maintained managed orchard is a fire break. And it is, I guess there are some trees that are pretty combustible, but getting a canopy fire in an orchard is
Yeah.
pretty highly
If you
unlikely.
look at the
Canopy.
CAL FIRE hazard maps, Loma Prieta is one of the few places with not extreme fire behavior, so they did take that into account.
Celine.
So, so my name is Salim. Just want to add one of my own experiences that, I reached out to CAL FIRE last year. And they have a program that they come in and examine your house and they see if you're fire hardened and whatnot. And for me, it was actually very reasonable to work with them. It was free. They came back a couple of times to make sure everything they recommended, I finished with that. And since it's free, I think some of you might be interested in just reaching out to them and they come in and the 3 fire guys came in and walk around and they're professional. So, so for me, that was very, very sort of beneficial. So CAL FIRE, I think that the one I called for Santa Clara was based in Morgan Hill.
Yeah.
And they came in within a week or something, just very, very professional, just for me, it was a good experience. Sort of added on to that, I'm gonna sort of plug my service if you guys don't mind. So while I was doing that, I had to clear lots of stuff. And it just became very tiresome and just very difficult. We hired people to come and do it and it just wasn't economical. So I ended up investing in this massive sort of mulching, masticated device.
And the Kubota.
And the Kubota track. Yeah. So it's a very efficient way if you need to like clear up a bunch of stuff quickly and fast, just reach out to me. So Hans and I are kind of putting
There you
it
go.
together.
So give us your information, because you're a local resource, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You may not be in our community, and for example, you may not be in our community, but you should sign up to our Firewise Google group, so you get, hear what we're doing and know what we're doing and can learn from what we offer.
And we're still in the infancy right now of, we've been doing Salim's property and you're working on getting all the licensing and all that.
Sure.
The
Are you guys
business
farther
end
up
of
on the
that.
mountain?
Sorry again?
Where are you guys located?
So I'm on both
Santa Cruz.
Santa Cruz Highway by Summit, basically.
Okay,
Real close.
yeah.
And the reason I went that route was the way we did it initially was I hired a bunch of people, we removed a bunch of stuff, cut it, we moved it, then the chippers came in. We also thank you for the free chipping program. It helped a lot and we have to spread it. But with this machine, you just go through it
Oh, yeah.
and it just chips everything, just demolishes, clears everything
Sure.
and just.
Does
spreads
the
it.
Aldercroft Heights Firewise community know about you?
We're working on that.
Yeah.
Because they're in their plan that they're gonna do mastication all along the whole,
It's good to
the
know.
whole road.
That's what we're just starting.
And they have the money to do it.
Oh, that's good to know, yeah. Yeah, so basically, anyways, just come afterwards and reach out to me if you need something. Hans and I can come by, take a look at it.
Or contact me, I'm on 95033 talk.
So before we open up to more questions, for Lydia, so I got a bunch of questions from the community and one of the recurring theme is like, I'm just waiting for the letter, right? If somebody were to get dropped. And as of now, it's fair plan. So maybe outline what you would suggest is kind of like the short-term best case scenario for someone who does get dropped because you know?
Sure, yeah, so I think there's two worthwhile things to explore. I know you mentioned you had gone through a broker. So outside of the FAIR plan, there are some non-admitted carriers who will provide homeowners insurance. Both the FAIR plan and non-admitted carriers both come with downsides. Even though the FAIR plan can be extraordinarily expensive, some admitted carriers are as well, but they tend to offer higher coverage for that same expensive line. Because, you know, ultimately one of the probably top recommendations I would give people is take a really big deductible. You know, I've had people come in, we were talking about the Sierra Foothills. I have a lot of customers in Groveland. That area is getting annihilated with increases because they are such a high wildfire area. And so at one point I have a customer who asked if he should just go without insurance. I said, I mean, my suggestion, take the biggest deductible you can get. You know, if you have a $20,000 deductible, it's massive. But if you can carry the coverage on your house and you lose the whole thing, at least you're not walking away with zero. You're not filing a claim for, you know, tree branch on your deck, but
You gotta
you
own your
are.
house outright to not
Yeah.
carry.
Right.
Have coverage anyways. I have a question. Is April there?
There she is. She's
April.
back.
I'm here.
Sprinklers in our house. Would exterior sidewall fire sprinklers qualify?
So no, in an IBHS does not, it's not one of their requirements to get the certificate. They have their list of what they are requiring. I think I posted in the unfortunately, the sprinklers are not one of them. However, you know, it might be one of those items that you might be able to get a discount on with by itself for your insurance, or like was mentioned before, certain items can kind of help you in that department, but the certification does not recognize right now the sprinklers inside or outside.
So a solid log home, there's no way to you cover it with concrete.
Unless the fire can't get to that home.
But you could do the non-flammable siding for 6 inches.
Yes.
There's two different.
No, I have that. I mean,
Oh, you already have that.
foundation clearance, so,
Okay,
but above that,
yeah. No.
And then what about non-owner occupied or multi-unit? Well, you know, does it make a difference?
Yeah, so multi-unit, when we get into like apartment style residences, that is extraordinarily difficult to get insurance on right now. One of the big disqualifiers is your electrical panel. So, and I don't know if anybody's familiar with Zinsco. If you have a Zinsco panel on your house or your apartment, that's something to replace pretty immediately. They are no longer, a lot of carriers will straight drop you for those Zinsco panels because they pose such a high fire risk.
not gonna happen.
Kind of panel?
Hey, can we pause the conversation?
Hey, Ed, we can't hear.
That's fine. Thank you.
It's called a Zinsco. I think it's Zinsco, if I remember the spelling
Yeah,
right.
Zinsco.
Those panels are extraordinarily hazardous, so that's something to keep an eye on. But for, you know, rental properties, for apartment policies, those are really best served through a brokerage because most brokers are going to be able to shop multiple carriers. And a lot of what I'm seeing right now is just non-admitted carriers. So one non-admitted carrier I'm aware of who does some coverage for rentals and houses is K&W, I believe is the one. So, you know, there are alternatives to the FAIR plan. Sometimes they're going to be better priced than what the FAIR plan's offering. They do tend to come with more exclusions than your traditional homeowners policies. They also aren't regulated by the state. So if you have a bad claim, the Department of Insurance is not on your side. They cannot help you. They don't regulate those non-admitted carriers. So that can be a big downside. If you're in a big, you know, contest going back and forth with that carrier over claim, you might be getting an attorney involved. There's no one on the state level to represent you. So whereas the California FAIR plan is regulated by the state, they're an admitted carrier, so the Department of Insurance will get involved and lobby on your behalf through that company. So the FAIR plan is not ideal. I highly suggest, I do believe that they give a Firewise discount with the FAIR plan. So you can get a discount there. So another plus that on that.
10%.
Yeah. So it's rather substantial for the FAIR plan, but you also have to make sure you get a DIC, which is a difference in conditions policy, also known as a wraparound. So the FAIR plan covers really fire and smoke. The wraparound, the difference in conditions comes in and adds your liability. It adds water losses, it adds theft, it adds falling trees. So all of those things that come in, that policy wraps around the fair plan to create a more complete homeowners policy, like what you'd get with traditional homeowners insurance. I highly recommend looking for a trustworthy broker, talking to friends and family. I'm happy to make some recommendations afterwards. I know a few brokerages who offer non-admitted carriers, who also work in the commercial market. They do apartment complexes and rentals. And they may be a really good option to reach out to for those of you who are in a space of needing it. I do have my cards up here also. You're welcome to email me with questions at any time. I work with people who are not my policyholders. I'm happy to answer questions about the insurance market. I think my pages fell down there, so my brochures behind are not relevant, but there is a whole flag on there about the insurance crisis in California and what's going on that does relate to a lot of what we're talking about tonight. But ultimately, I think either the fair plan or the non-admitted carriers may be the only choice for a while. I'm hopeful within the next year we see carriers coming back into the market. There also is a good chance that between negotiations with legislators and the Department of Insurance, that we'll see some offloading of the fair plan. We might be able to bring some people back off of that into a traditional market. It is a really up in the air game right now because nothing has been approved yet. And we get legislative options coming in and then they get shot down. And so there's a lot of back and forth and not a lot of movement, but I'm hopeful that that will change soon. So I'm happy to answer more questions if people are in need of coverage and needing to find something. I'm happy to try and give some direction where I can to people who might have some options.
And what if a property owner decides that they want to move
Mhm.
and rent their house out? What does that do for them for insurance?
Well, that becomes a problem because you have to rewrite your homeowner's policy into a rental dwelling policy. There are different policies. They come with different endorsements and different coverage. A big thing on a rental is loss of rent. If you cannot rent out your home to your tenants because of a claim, your policy should be paying you for the lost rent. Your homeowner's policy will not do that. And you might not get coverage altogether if you have not told your insurance company or disclosed that you have started renting it. Depends on the situation, the company, and the claim. But it's best to be forthright with your agent and whoever you work with for your insurance, whoever your broker, your agent, or your representative is. I highly recommend calling before you make that change to find out whether or not they'll be able to rewrite that policy or whether you're going to be stuck potentially losing coverage. For some people who are doing it on a more temporary basis, like renting out their house part of the year and living it the other part of the year, sometimes there is an endorsement to your homeowner's policy you can add that allows you to keep that policy while also encompassing that rental. But that's usually limited and depends on the carrier. So again, I highly recommend talking to your agent, broker, representative about what options are available depending on what you're planning on doing.
Gotcha. So we got 30 minutes. So do you want to open it up to questions in the room?
Sure.
Anything else that you guys want to share on closing before we move to questions?
I guess I would just say, in terms of the individual home hardening aspects of things, I think what we have to do is people are gonna have to realize that we live in a forest and it's beautiful and everything, but the surrounding area, from your front door to the forest, gotta look a lot different than it does today. And I think that it doesn't have to look like an Arizona home, but it's gonna look different.
Just 5 feet of it.
Well, yeah, well, not even that really, but yeah, things have to change a little bit, and if we can educate people and promote that idea, it'll just happen much faster.
Okay.
Sure.
You want some?
No,
Rick?
I thought June was gonna answer.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
I want to know how, this whole loss of insurance carriers in this area is affecting the real estate market.
Sure.
And, how is it affecting it? Are sales happening? Do you want to get find out whether they, can get insurance along with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, insurance up here is always kind of expensive, right? I mean, it has been. And it's a little bit of a sticker shock when buyers are like, what, it's 10,000, right? So that coupled with rates have kind of been a double whammy, right? So you figure 1,000 a month in mortgage now is about 150,000 in principal, more or less, right? That's kind of what you're paying down. So yeah, it's definitely impacting what buyers, not necessarily what they believe the house is worth, but what they can afford, right? It's an affordability issue. And so we are seeing a lot of buyers, I think, staying away from the WUI areas, the urban interface areas, right? Because not only because of the cost, but just the perception, right? Like, why can't I get insurance, right? Like, what's crazy about being up in the mountains, right? And so a lot of that is kind of how those buyers are spoken to and explain the situation. So I will tell you that I haven't seen any deals die because of insurance. I've seen fewer buyers in the market, but that's just in general, right? Because of interest rates predominantly. The more
That's changing, right?
it's changing for sure. The last couple of months have been tenfold on activity in the mountain area.
Already like forecasting far more costs.
Yeah. But I mean, the rates are far more of an impact than the cost of insurance because insurance is short term, right? And a lot of sellers that I counsel will budget in and say, okay, you want a 12-month credit for half of your insurance, buy it, it's easier to do that. And it kind of puts in perspective. We're talking $5,000, $10,000, right? The difference as opposed to 2%, 3% interest rates, that was a far bigger impact on our markets than anything else, right? So as the interest rates start to come down, we'll see more market movement. So, but yeah, I mean, it's more perception, to be honest. It's not taking buyers out. They're doing the fair plan and they're just kind of sucking up and doing it. And they just realize, you know what? It's just a cost of living up there and, gas is expensive. I mean, everything's expensive, right? Living in the mountains isn't cheap. It's a lifestyle choice, right? So they come up here for the lifestyle, not necessarily because insurance is,
Not necessarily.
it's not the kiss of death.
impacting the
No, no, I mean, we should have a panel on lending because that's far more important, right? The interest rates are far more important for our market because we don't have the cash buyers for the most part, right? We don't see cash buyers like you do in the valley. Most of the buyers up here are taking a loan, right? And so a 2%, 3% interest rate hike is far more impactful than insurance. We're just happy to get the insurance, right? And close on that transaction and fair plan's taken 6 weeks, 8 weeks sometimes. So that's really the hurdle. But
that's
yeah.
part of the contingency, right? The buyer from that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a contingency. I would just say, insurance is not an impediment to a transaction right now. It's really not. Buyers they're just they're sucking it up. Because at the end, I mean, you think about it, it's like, it's painful when you're already in and you're paying 3,000 and then it goes to 12. But if, I mean, like, that's pretty gnarly. But if you're moving up here and you're just like, hey, it's 10 grand and it's gonna be like that for the next 12 months, 18, and then you can get it, here's Lydia.
Hopefully.
Lydia will write you a policy when things open back up and they're like, okay, I get it. Right.
Yeah, I see someone back there.
So we bought, on Long Ridge, in December. We looked at the house in August and just from the quote we got in August, it was $6,500. And when we actually got to close, it went up to 9,800.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So those 3 months of what it took to organize mortgaging before.
Yeah, I believe it was in December that they had their rate increase and it hit January 1st, if I'm not incorrect.
And that's
Yeah.
the fair plan.
Yeah, I do believe their rates, it was either the very end of December, very beginning of January, they had a really big rate hike and it was nasty. My brother-in-law got hit with that pretty hard and it was painful.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably more painful for the longtime residents who've just been kind of used to a lower,
Yeah, used to 2,000 to 3,000.
right? I mean, let's
Goes
just
to
be,
9.
you know what I mean? Like someone who's, unfortunately, I mean, that's kind of the state of California, right? The new policies are paying for the old anyway.
Yeah.
So-
I do, my closing comment, I didn't say anything about this, but having lived in this community a long time and I want to continue living here. And I remember what we had to do to save the Loma Prieta School, and that was
Which year?
Scotty can talk more to that. I'm hoping at some point we can put together an intelligent proposal to the legislature. I know there's legislation, but it is, you know, most people have done this, but legislation is usually written by people finding a legislature that will put it forward. And I think we need to get together eventually with our legislators and come up with an intelligent plan. It's not just our community, it's the whole state of California. You know, we're sliding into the ocean, we're burning down, we're running out of water. These are issues that, you know, we have to take, you know, sensible action, and it needs to be thought out carefully and not just in an election year. And I think that we can find sympathetic legislators that will listen to us, especially if we talk with one voice. So, you know,
That's the
somewhere
best thing.
months down the road, because
Mhm.
right now everything's in chaos, but I do think we can, is a larger group, we can get the legislator to listen to
So
us.
just to add to what you said, but I was just gonna just chime in about that, because I think ultimately we gotta take some action.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you know, and I think you were saying there are 5 million houses like us, 5 million.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Something
so
like
that's a large number,
It's a bit
and
large.
5 million as a sort of unified voice can have a lot of impact in legislation, you know. So I don't know if you can organize all the 5 million, but even if you start their own community.
Yeah.
But what's surprising, but at some point, you know, I was part of the sort of advocacy group. I went to Feinstein's office. I've been to, before that, I went to different congressional offices. And once you walk into the office as a small group, it's surprising how much impact it has. Because there's a lot of noise and jitter out there, but when they see a sort of a committed community walk in there with a very set key agenda and requirements, they really listen, right? And if we do it and somehow sort of publicize it, other communities will hopefully do it, and maybe we can just like the firewire, we can somehow have bridge them together.
Right.
But we need to have some very specific legislation to propel the state forward.
Economies
For the
of
future.
scale, and Firewise is a great place to start, because there's, you know, several hundred of them in the region, so including San Mateo County, so,
Sorry, go ahead.
oh, go ahead, Rick.
I was gonna say, and we want to include all the stakeholders. We
Yeah.
want the water districts, we want the insurance companies, we want the PG&Es, because this is not just homeowners that are getting impacted, it's all of us. And so we want a legislation that is fair, and insurance companies can afford to operate, and PG&E doesn't have to go out of business, and, you know, we don't get fires started when we should. And so it's a big
I
problem.
think what we might be both saying is that we should have a follow-up, but more actionable kind of a meeting. Could be online, could be just elaborate, but just basically figure out the next step. Just maybe they're very minimal, we'll just organize a group and we'll just go meet with some of the local legislations and just say, here, the 3 concerns we have, insurance, PG, whatever it might be, right? I'm not saying what it should be. But that would be a good step for us just to start moving the wheels forward.
Sure. Yeah.
well, the Firewise seems to be the
Well,
logical
Firewise
place
is
to
a good
start.
mechanism to organize. I mean, one of the main principles of the whole mitigation effort is to organize and partner and, you know, broadcast what you're doing out to as many people as you can and get synergies everywhere, right? And so Firewise is a good example of that,
Yeah.
actually, so.
Steve and I were talking privately, there's probably about 30 of them between Santa Cruz, maybe even 40 of them, between
Yeah.
Santa Cruz and Santa Clara. We can meet with them at some point. I'd like to see us happen in the
They,
fall.
right now, they only have one meeting a year for the regional Firewise leaders, but anyone can actually go to it, but they're already talking about expanding that, so it's a great idea. It's something we should definitely
So
pursue.
will you be sending a follow-up email, Rick, to this, or should
Yeah,
I
well,
do it,
no.
or how we want to take the next steps?
Well, I would like to get a list of emails from.
Yeah, we
the
can
meetings
do
so that I
an
can
outreach.
Tell everybody about our
Mhm.
Firewise community. And then again, I think the benefit of that is you can at least be in tune with what's happening in a Firewise community, whether you start your own or not, you know, it's up to you, but go ahead, I'm sorry.
One thing you're lacking here is you have not provided, like written up on the board, contact information for all of you and the person on the phone.
if you leave your email address there, you'll get a summary and a list of all the players.
I have a
There's
card here
sign-up sheet here.
with my email and phone number, but I'm happy to write it on the board if you'd like.
Yeah. There's a clipboard.
There's a sign-in sheet over there
I
and
would have recommended that you had done that before the meeting had even started, so people would then be
Yeah,
able to
good
go,
point.
I wanna talk to that guy some more. Or
Yeah, yeah.
he really had a good idea, but I need to know some,
Who it is.
you know, having that.
that's Steve, Rick and Lydia. I'm Mike.
No, you're right, you're right. We should have done that, but I think this was a pretty add-on. It just kind of came together,
Did.
I think you're doing good.
Any questions? Yeah,
I have two questions, one for Lydia and one
Thank you.
for Steve. Steve, can you form a Firewise community that
That's
crosses
my name on the top right.
the two counties? Because I'm
Oh, yeah.
right at the top Hutchinson. Okay, so you can.
We are.
We are.
We're,
so
we
you're-
straddle Santa Clara and Santa Cruz County.
Okay, perfect.
And by the way, we're the only one in the region that does that. It was
Okay.
kind of an anomaly, but they saw that it worked
Thank you.
and
I'll
they're
write my
they're
email on
A-okay
that
with
Yeah,
it.
because I'm right at the top of Hutchinson and Reaper Ridge is a community and Hutchinson further down to Felton is a community.
Right.
And we're in this like no man's land. That bridge is like across my street and then back over, then down Summit all the way. And I'd like to go all the way down to 17.
If you can
But it's both
do the
sides.
boundaries,
Okay.
and it doesn't matter
Because
whether
otherwise
it
it'd be like
straddles counties
30
or not.
people on one side and like 25 on the other, and it would just be weird, so.
and you don't really need like unanimous consent from
No,
every,
not at all. In fact,
right?
we-
You
like I
just kind of
said,
draw a boundary and go for it,
Yeah,
right?
we just
There,
decided
there,
this was
there are
probably,
many examples of like the open space district or
Yeah.
school districts. The
Mhm.
one we're sitting in
Yeah.
right now,
That
that
straddle.
straddle
Straddle.
counties.
Okay,
County lines are just a county issue.
The tax
Nobody else
issue.
cares about that.
okay. Well, I've already
But
started
you
working
pointed
with
it out.
Lynn Suspect in Santa Cruz County. I don't know if you even know who that is, because I'm a Santa Cruz County resident, but
so
I'll
much.
continue the conversation with her. And then for Lydia, my question was, I own property in downtown Los Gatos
Mhm.
on the North Santa Cruz Strip. And my understanding, I was canceled after owning the property for over 20 years by farmers, because apparently downtown Los Gatos is now a wildfire zone. Literally.
It's surprising, actually.
I mean, it is surprising, it's not surprising, I don't, but how do they, like, with this fire rating system thing, I mean, your hands are kind of tied in downtown Los Gatos, right? Like, the building I own is a Thai Spice building, so what am I gonna do?
Right.
Are there measures, I've been, I know it's funny, but it's not funny, right? When I got the letter, I was like, wildfire district, what? So, what is there that people can do for commercial properties in a more urban setting, not very rural in downtown Los Gatos?
Yeah, that's a hard one because that can also be company to company. They can have different standards and measures and ways that they look upon each individual area. But I know that when in the past, historically, when we've looked at commercial buildings, the electrical panel is a big deal. The roof condition's a big deal. Making sure that the building appears well maintained. Things like security measures where you have a reporting burglar alarm or a reporting central station fire alarm, those things can go a long way in terms of making your insurance carrier happy. They like to see those things. But you know, touch bases with me because I have a couple commercial brokers that I have had help customers in the past, and they seem to be able to have markets over there.
Oh, well, I was fortunately very lucky. I found coverage pretty quickly.
Oh,
through a
good.
company I never heard of called Stillwater.
Yep, uh-huh.
And I worked with Don Williams in Los Gatos. But it was just, I was thinking to myself with all this rating system, what could I possibly do? And they sent out an inspector.
Mhm.
He took pictures of a bunch of stuff
Yep.
and made sure I had the right fire extinguishers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then my other question for you was, we had a claim, I lost my driveway last February with snowstorms.
Oh,
I
yeah.
got a tree and my whole driveway was uprooted.
Sure.
Fortunately, I had ingress egress coverage on my policy that I didn't even know was a thing. And so State Farm covered me to the tune of almost $60,000, which is great. And I love I love State Farm. I've used it for years and years. When the inspector came out to do the claim assessment,
Mhm.
he went my driveway is in one portion, but he walked the whole property, took pictures all around, went up on my roof, took pictures of my roof, took pictures of everything. And I was just wondering, is that was he doing a show and tell to make sure that they weren't gonna cancel me?
I don't think so. It's hard for me not being involved in the claim to have a really good answer to that. But the claims department and the underwriting department who determines renewals, they are not tied together.
Okay.
They don't talk, other than
I
a
had
claim goes in.
Exactly, that happened, almost like 15 years ago. I forget the company, it's in the house that don't live in anymore. Where somebody, came up and knocked on the door, said, hey, we want to confirm the square footage of the house for insurance purposes.
Mhm.
And he walked around, took pictures of everything, and they canceled us like the following week.
Now that's a surveyor, so that's different than a claims adjuster, because it sounds like she was having photos taken because of a claim related event.
Yeah.
We do surveys where we will send inspectors out to re-survey homes to make sure it still looks acceptable. Now, I don't know what company it was that did
I was
that.
fortunate, it was Don Williams was my broker, and I called up, my broker and said, I asked what the hell, and, he made it good and
Yeah.
got us reinstated and all that. Had to do a couple of things, but I mean, like the guy said, you don't have any fire protection, and he took a picture of the water tank with the blue reflector.
Yep.
And the locker, I've got all of the spray on gel.
Yeah.
And the fire hoses and all that stuff, and it's all labeled and it's all reflective and all that stuff. Took a picture of it, said, no fire protection. It was in the background of the picture, but.
So, the surveys do happen. My experience with State Farm, because we were seeing an increase in them right now, probably because we are also trying to mitigate losses. And mostly everything is either fine, or we come back saying like, you've got a lot of debris hanging out in your yard that needs to be picked up. And a lot, by debris, I don't mean like redwood debris. It's like somebody's whole garage has, rolled out into their yard. And, other things that we see are roofs. So that's why I mentioned the roofs. One of the biggest things that I am seeing the survey companies come back and report to the insurance companies on is the quality and condition of the roof. They look at everything from the granules remaining on the composition shingles. They look to see if there are missing shingles, if they are peeling, if it looks like there is like wear and deterioration happening. If there is moss, they do not like moss, but moss is pretty nasty for roofs. It will get under those comp shingles and lift them, allowing water to get in. That can cause claims we would rather avoid. So oftentimes, having that like the moss pressure washed off the roof, and then having a roofer come out and check the bill that everything looks good, that's usually enough for most of us. But maintaining that property does come up. If you have holes in your siding, if you have, a bunch of junk in your yard, those things can flag issues for potential claims that they are looking to avoid. But we're giving people 12 to 18 months to get these things cleaned up before their next renewal date. So it's not like we're putting you in a pinch a week out. Every company is a little bit different though. But yeah, generally when you have a claim, they are taking photos, they're looking for any additional damage. They are usually not the same thing as the surveyor who's coming out to check to see if there's any risks that might be coming up.
Okay, thank you.
Does the house get kind of a bad, like a red tag in the insurance worlds when you have repeat?
Like a speeding ticket?
Yeah, like, like I filed a claim and I got a $5,000, claim, and then
claims-
does it carry on to other
Yeah,
companies?
well, as far as claims, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah, claims are absolutely reported to a loss reporting agency that other agencies can pull from. So if you file a claim on your homeowner's insurance, other carriers can run a loss run and see whether there has been any claims. Some won't, if they don't have access to that, might ask you to provide a loss run from your existing company. So those loss runs, though, as far as insurance companies and claims, and again, I'm really speaking from my experience with State Farm, they're looking for persistency. So are you filing the exact same kind of claim over and over again? Is this a preventable claim? I can tell you a claim that insurance companies hate is getting stuff stolen out of your car. Don't leave your stuff in your car. That's very preventable. Leaving your laptops and your purses and your briefcases in the car and then having that stolen, that didn't have to happen. Wildfires are different. Catastrophe claims are very different. So if we had customers who got hit really bad in the CZU fire and massive claim. And then a couple years later, we had those big windstorms and that big winter last year, and they had another huge claim. Those weren't preventable. There's nothing you can, there's certainly measures you can take to protect yourself in the event of a wildfire, but that's a lot different than letting your roof rot and then all of a sudden water's pouring through during a rainstorm. So preventable losses versus catastrophe losses, those are looked at differently. And then how frequently are you putting in claims, and are they the same thing over and over? I had a customer who I could not quite seem to get through to He filed 3 stolen bicycle claims within like a 4-year period. And it was just like every 18 months, his bike was getting stolen and he was filing a claim. It's like $1,800 that was getting paid out. He got dropped.
They're not canceling the insurance for the preventable losses. They're canceling it because of the catastrophic.
Yeah, well, that's the non-renewal. So canceling on an individual level because of claims is a different scenario where your coverage could be in jeopardy. And of course, as insurance agents, we have to be thoughtful. We can never discourage a customer from making a claim. If you call and say, I want to make a claim, we have got to file it. And that's the right thing. It's worthwhile asking your insurance carrier when you are getting ready to file a claim. 1, what's my deductible? Don't file a claim if you're not certain it's going to go above your deductible. That's a good way to keep things off your record. If you've got a $5,000 deductible and it turns out you've got $2,000 in damage, that claim isn't going to help you anyways.
Yeah.
So making sure that you know what kind of a loss you're looking at. Asking if this will impact your policy. That's a question you can ask. We can't just come out and say like, well, this is your 4th claim and, the last deck. We have to be mindful that like, we can't be retaliatory, and it's also not as your agent's decision on whether or not you get renewed. We don't have a say in that, unfortunately. But it is a good idea to just talk to your agent. Like, what does a claim do to my policy? What is my deductible? Is this covered?
But
Have
it
that
does follow
conversation.
you
Mhm.
from-
Usually, to my understanding, is they're on your record. They can be seen for about 3 to 5 years.
Look like a credit report.
Yep.
Mhm.
Same thing for your car insurance. You have an accident, it goes on your driving record.
Can I ask a question about the fire safe?
Let's
No,
get
go
her, no, she had raised her hand earlier. Let's get her real quick. We'll circle.
Lydia, I'd like to ask you if, I'm trying to understand how unique or not unique Rick's experience is, if it's a farmer's thing or if it's the Cumming thing. Should we all expect to have to file in these IDHS certificates? Is that coming or?
That's the first I've heard about that with farmers. So, it sounds to me like a farmer's thing. I haven't heard of any other carriers picking up the requirement to get that, home hardened certificate. And they do that wildfire, it's a hefty checklist. And to my understanding, April, there's the wildfire prepared and then there's the wildfire prepared plus. So those are also 2 different requirements, one taking quite a bit more work to qualify for. Is that right, April? So
That's correct.
also worth knowing which one they're asking for. Is it the wildfire prepared or the prepared plus? Because the prepared plus is a big old list. It is not small. It is intensive how much you have to go through to get certified. And I have not found anyone in my experience who's been able to easily do that, unless they just built their house surrounding with that, with that all in mind. But I haven't heard of other carriers making that mandatory that you will need that certificate to go forward. So that's a new one that I have not heard of from them before.
And we heard it from Nancy. It's not, I'm not sure that farmers the dust will settle on farmers, what they're gonna do. Nancy said that they told her, if you don't have their certificate, they renewed me without their certificate because it was, so I think that, I don't know, Lydia, if this sounds very hypothetical, but I think there's negotiations still going on with the insurance commissioner, with all the insurance companies of how they're gonna move forward and how they're gonna increase rates and what discounts and standards they're gonna use. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So I don't think we know really what's gonna happen, but I think it behooves all of us to be hardening our homes anyway.
Yeah.
It's just,
Agreed.
would I go for the certificate? I would rather cherry pick that certificate and not do some of the things on it, but I'm just doing it because I feel like I'm this close. And, I'm trying to share it with the rest of the community so other people can think twice and know, at least what I went through and some of the things like the 5-foot clearance, that's been around for a very long time. And I've always sort of done that, but I've always done it every year, like I clear the brush every year. This time, I'm not gonna have to do anything except use my leaf blower. And that's being old, that's all I wanna do. I don't wanna be pulling up the blackberries every summer before I leave town, so. Some of these things make a lot of sense and we should all be doing them.
I think my question was for Firewise, does the Firewise community of 8, do they need to be on the same road? Or they can just be,
Or contiguous property
Yeah,
lines or anything like
contiguous.
that.
Well, they have to be within a boundary that you can
Set.
name
so
or
as long
show.
as we're all,
You can go beyond the 8 too. You don't need everyone's, consent. You can just draw a boundary and just,
yeah, but
Right.
as long as we're kind
Grab
of
it.
all touching in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know the exact criteria, but they basically tell you that your community needs to be identified with boundaries, right? So that they know what it is, how many homes, all that kind of stuff, right? But I think you could probably have a community that maybe has a stretch of land between it that may not be part of the community or not participate, but you just include them anyway. It doesn't, you know,
You
it
don't have
doesn't,
to have 100% of
Right.
everybody in the neighborhood
right.
sign up.
You don't
Yeah.
have to have everybody signed up, even
Well,
though
I
some
think we
people
have
do.
Yeah.
I think we have 8 in around me.
With
Yeah,
that
fine.
smaller number,
Yeah.
make it easier to comply and, you know,
Oh, yeah, I mean, I
Well,
can't
think
remember
we
the
can get it
minimum, but
started with 8 and
Yeah.
then maybe grow
Eight is a good number.
exactly.
down the road.
You either grow or you join another larger
Yeah.
community.
So it's easy to expand the boundary.
Sure.
Well, I think that's pretty much 8 o'clock.
By the way, I want to thank you for putting this together. I
Yes.
meant to say at the beginning.
Thank you, Mike.
Well, I got canceled by Berkshire, so I wanted to know because of my bark,
Yep.
my tan bark. Yeah, no, I mean, I think insurance, living in the mountains is not for the faint of heart. And so we gotta kind of work together and understand because, I mean, you guys do so much. Your wealth of knowledge, the three of you, is kind of staggering. And so it's
We look
appreciated
good.
that you're willing to share it. So, and that's just the tip of the iceberg for you. So appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.